Hey, this video is probably not the most organized, but a few people have asked me about my film selections. You know, what films do I typically shoot and why and in what kind of conditions. So I thought I'll try to explain. Now, this is not scientific or not even very systematic, but I've noticed that I've started to use certain films more than others, and that might be interesting since some of you asked about that. First, a few basics about my work. I mostly shoot black and white. Then I also shoot medium format and large format and hardly any 35mm film. So that also is significant because then I have a certain relationship with grain. It's never a problem unless there's too little of it because of the bigger negative size. And then I develop all my films at home, black and white, color negatives and color positives. I think I made a few videos about developing film at home. If I find those, I put links to the description page. But developing film at home gives a lot of new possibilities, especially in black and white, and I think that's also important to remember because it's not only the film, but it's also the developer and how you use it that makes a difference. So I noticed that I have a few go-to film stocks. So first of all, Ilford FP4 Plus. Just a good all-arounder. It's ASA 125, so you need a little bit light, but it's always excellent results that you get with this film. Then also Ilford HP5 Plus. I really like their vintage packaging. But this is also a good all-arounder. It's a bit faster, ASA 400. And this is probably the most versatile film there is. You can push and you can pull it and develop in different ways. I also shoot it in large format where it gives excellent results. Then in large format, you know, the price becomes easily an issue. And there I use a lot of Fomapan 100 in 4x5 sheet film format. This is fairly nicely priced and in good lighting condition gives very nice results. But when it gets dark, the reciprocity failure is so awful that's almost unusable. And the exposure times, you start to measure them in hours and it just goes out of hand. But you know, for good lighting conditions. Then of course, Kodak products like T-Maxes are good films, but here in Europe these are not very competitively priced compared to Ilford films, which are equally good, if not better, and cheaper than these Kodak. So sometimes I buy them when I find them cheap. So these are my go-to films that I use for almost anything. But then there are certain special films that I also use. I use them for special occasions or when I want to get something different. And first of all, especially at the color side, I use a lot of expired films. I use expired color positives. This pack of Ektachrome has expired in 89. Then I have a lot of Fuji Provia 4x5s that expired in 1999. But color positive film expires, ages really well. You don't need to add any development time or exposure time. You just shoot them at the box speed and develop in a standard way and you get often very nice results. So this is something I shoot. I really love Fuji color, both 160 and 400 color film. They don't make this anymore, so whenever I see these I buy them, even though I don't shoot that much color. Then I love slow films, once again for special occasions. Good example is Non-Color Studio Experimental 5. It's an ASA 5 film. Or then say Filmwashi E. It's a black and white film ISO 3. So I really like to shoot these slow films because of the special characteristics they give, and you know, you can freeze time and do all those kind of things. Then sometimes I go to the other extreme. I shoot quite a bit of Ilford Delta 30 200, but only to push it aggressively. I push it all the way to 12,800. You know, Ilford HP5 Plus, you can push that also. I push it up to 6,400, but this Delta goes even further. But you know, for special occasions. Then I have temporary love affairs, films that I fall in love and then let's see if that lasts. Bankra 400 is one of my latest discoveries. I really like this film. It's a bit old-fashioned film and it has a lot of grain, but that's why I love it a lot. Some people don't like it, especially in the 35mm, because it's a bit rough. Fomapan 400. I think I made a video recently about 400 Fomapan. Muddy, dark, heavy film, and that's why I love it. It's not for everything, but for the purposes that I use it, it's an excellent film. Also in the large format, fairly affordable, but I also shoot it in 120. But then when we talk about these films, we also need to talk about developers, because film alone means almost nothing. It's the developer that matters. In black and white. In color, it doesn't matter, my experience, it doesn't matter which developer you use. I buy whatever is available, both color positive and color negative, and I've used them to push and pull color film too, and they all seem to work the same. It really doesn't matter what you use. But in black and white, the richness of developer film combinations is what interests me. I currently use mainly two developers, Rodinal and then XTOL, or any XTOL copy. XTOL is a Kodak product, and Kodak has been a mess what comes to their chemicals lately. So I've started to use various copies of their products, like Adox XT3 developer. Let's see if Kodak can get their act together now that they reorganize their chemical processing and deliveries. But you know, meanwhile I use this. This is really a nice XTOL copy. So why do I have these two? What are the conditions? So I use XTOL copies whenever I need to get the smooth, fine grain look. Also when I need to do something really extra special, like pushing. You know, Rodinal is not really good at pushing, but if I push, say, Delta 3200 to 12,000 and beyond, it's always an XTOL copy. The problem with XTOL is that the shell life is fairly short. It goes bad if it stays in the bottle for too long, and you never know when that happens. It happens sort of like, not gradually, but you know, one Monday morning it doesn't work anymore. So, but you know, I make new batches. What comes to the cost of film development and film in general, the cost of your developer is the last thing you should worry about. So I make myself new batches whenever I feel like I need. But then Rodinal, I really love Rodinal. I know a lot of people don't love it, but once again, since I shoot mostly large formats, medium and large format, I can really use its characteristics. It creates grain, which I love. It also makes things really punchy, which I like. Shelf life is eternity. It never goes bad. And then it's fairly affordable. Also extremely good for stand development, where you create really a mild mix of the developer, and then you can even out different exposures. So you can even shoot one roll of film in different speeds. Like one frame can be shot at ASA 100, the next frame can be shot on ASA 400, and then the third one can be ASA 200, mixing and matching within the film. And then when you develop in Rodinal, in stand development, all those images are going to be perfect. So that's an interesting possibility and very useful in certain occasions, and then Rodinal can do it. So as a summary, Rodinal for my everyday purposes, for stand development and really getting the look that I love. A bit rough, if you will. And then XTOL, any XTOL copies to get that fine, really beautiful look. Or then pushing and pulling film. So then some of the considerations that I always take into account. First of all, contrast. Some film stocks advertise themselves to be really contrasty, and that's always a bad thing for me. Not always, but most of the time. I want the minimum amount of contrast in my film, because then you can add contrast later in your Lightroom or in your darkroom or using a certain developer. You can't remove contrast. If your film is really contrasty, you lack the details and there's nothing you can do to bring them back. So less contrast is always good. Grain, I already discussed about grain. It's not an issue to me. I love grain. I love that film look, and I want to amplify it, partially because of the bigger film size. Price is always an issue, especially if you shoot larger formats, sheet film. So I don't want to spend too much money. And you know, for example, this Kodak T-Max that I said it's not that well priced here in Europe. There's a local seller, you know, brick and mortar store here that sources Kodak T-Max in a fairly competitive price. The owner of the shop said to me that he goes online and really searches for good sources of Kodak film, and he can sometimes sell it in a fairly good price. So then I buy it because it's a good film. But price is of course a consideration. Then availability. That's a huge thing to me. If I fall in love with a certain film, then I want to have plenty of it. So whenever I need that kind of a film, I can go and shoot it. That's why these expired films are such a problematic thing, because I mean, I buy Fujifilm when I find it, but often you fall in love with a certain film and then you don't find it anymore. A few years ago I found this Agfa Portra 160 film stock. I bought one of that, one roll, and I really liked it. So then I bought all the film that this seller had. I think, was it 5 or 10 rolls? But then I ran out of it and I don't have it anymore. So all that experience and all that is kind of wasted. Bankra, that I love a lot, seem to have problem in their production, and as of making this film, you can't get Bankra 400 in 120 size, which I really hate, and therefore I bought some Ilford HP5 Plus. Bankra lost my account because they don't make it available, and so this is a huge thing to me. I need to have it available to create my style and use its patterns for that particular film. Then, if we really are honest, and if I look at the videos all across the YouTube where people compare films and make reviews and argue about them, I can't always agree with those videos. I think film is less important than some people suggest. Especially if you now take these sort of mainstream films. These are all the same. There's no way you can tell just by looking at the negative which film was used. The chosen developer means more than the film that you use. and much more what you do either in your darkroom or lightroom, or how do you print, which paper you use, all those things. They affect your photos much more than what was the film stock that you used, honestly. And a color film is the same. The problem with color film in the digital era is that you can make any color film stock to look anything else. Like you can make Ektar look like Portra. So I have a little bit of an issue with that. Also, if you shoot, you know, the size matters. If you shoot 35mm, your film consideration is probably totally different than mine. So then not talking about the size of the film and then comparing film stocks, that also does not make any sense. So that's basically what I do. To summarize, I think it's important to think about the developer even before you shoot, because it's the developer film combination that is important, not the film alone. Size matters, and then there are special purposes where you need special films, and then you can't judge that film as an all-arounder if you use it for special purposes, like extremely pushed or then extremely slow for certain purposes. I'm not sure if I made any sense, but these are my selections, and I'm open to experiment, but you know, I don't think these two Ilford products are gonna change anytime soon. And this is not a paid commercial, I just love Ilford products. Hey, thanks for watching. Next time something else.